What up, YouTube? Here with a post-fight video for the Magsayo versus Brandon Figueroa fight. Now, before I give y'all the summary of what happened in the fight, I'm going to tell y'all the results first. Brandon Figueroa was able to win this fight via unanimous decision. I personally had the fight score 114 and 112 in favor of Brandon Figueroa. This was a close competitive bout. As far as how many rounds each fighter's won, I had it even. That goes to show y'all this was a competitive fight. However, the official judges had it a one-sided fight on their scorecards. I don't know what fight they were watching. Two of the judges had a score 117 and 109, while the other judge had a score 118 and 108. It was somewhere around there as far as the official scorecard numbers goes. And this fight definitely wasn't a one-sided fight like how the official judges scored it. And to sum up what happened in the fight, as I said, this was a fun fight, a good fight to spectate, and it was a good action fight, good back and forth action between the two fighters. And what ended up hurting Magsayo as far as the scorecards goes is the 2-point deduction he got for holding. And he would have had this fight scored a draw if it weren't for the 2-point deductions. And as I said, I had the fight scored even as far as how many rounds each fighter had won. The only reason why I had Figueroa up on the scorecards is because of those 2-point deductions. And the holding came from because Brandon Figueroa would have success whenever they would have the fight fought at a close proximity. And on the inside is where Brandon Figueroa would start to find his mark and find some success and let his offense go. And the mid-range is where Magsayo will find success at finding his mark and landing his shots. And Magsayo, he was the action pursuer, he was a more busier fighter, and he threw more shots than Brandon Figueroa. I thought Brandon Figueroa landed the more cleaner, effective shots. And Magsayo, he did a good job at having the fight being fought at spots in the ring that he wanted the fight to be fought at. He did a good job at not having his back against the ropes and against the corner and not being trapped. And he also displayed good skills when it came to creating angles for himself and good footwork and good pivots to utilize angles and create new offensive spots for him to be at better positions to land his shots from. And his combinations are very impressive as well, and he's got very fast hands. And there was a speed difference shown in this fight as far as Magsayo being the superior fighter when it comes to hand speed and landing more fluid combos. Brandon Figueroa, he'd have his moments here and there when he would muster up his offense and throw combinations of his own, and he would find success at landing those combinations as well. And that's when Magsayo would show signs of fatigue, and that was later on in the rounds. And Brandon Figueroa, where he would find success at other than in close range, it would be whenever he would counter the lazy jab of Magsayo with either a overhand left or a overhand right, because in this fight Brandon Figueroa was switching stance a lot. And boxing fans know that Brandon Figueroa is a switch hitter. He could fight lefty or orthodox, and in this fight he would switch stance based on the pressure and the offense that Magsayo would bring his way. That would force Brandon Figueroa to switch stance to adjust and counter the offense that Magsayo was bringing towards his way. And Brandon Figueroa, as far as his offense goes, I'm quite sure that he was frustrated because he couldn't have Mark Magsayo trapped against the ropes and against the corner where he could let off his shots and find success, and that's where he would have liked to have the fight being fought at. Mark Magsayo, as I said, shouted out his good display of footwork in this fight to be able to maneuver around the ring very well, to not be trapped in certain spots like against the ropes and against the corner. And Brandon Figueroa, a part where he showed good skills, where I gotta shout him out at, is his improvement when it comes to his head movement and his defense. Brandon Figueroa, he's a very active, aggressive fighter, and he tends to get hit more than he has to, and he likes that back and forth action, blow for blow kind of fights. And in this fight, he showed good head movement, good upper body movement when it comes to displaying defensive skills, because as I said earlier, Mark Magsayo was the more active fighter. He threw more shots and he threw more combos, and a lot of those shots Brandon Figueroa was able to not get hit with because he showed improvements when it came to head movement and defensive skills, and that's what helped him avoid those shots and flurries of punches from Mark Magsayo. And this was for the interim WBC featherweight title. This was Brandon Figueroa's debut fight at featherweight, and he took on a very tough opponent in Mark Magsayo. Mark Magsayo, in his previous fight before this fight, he was defending the WBC featherweight title versus Ray Vargas, and that was a close fight where Ray Vargas won that fight and became the new WBC featherweight champion. And Mark Magsayo, still being one of the top contenders in the featherweight division, and Brandon Figueroa being a top level fighter, a former champion at super bantamweight and moving up to featherweight. Y'all remember Brandon Figueroa's last fight was versus Stephen Fulton in a super bantamweight title unification bout, and that was one of the best fights of last year, a very close competitive bout, and a lot of boxing fans were looking forward to a possible rematch with Stephen Fulton and Brandon Figueroa because of how close and how competitive that fight was. And Brandon Figueroa decided to move up to a new weight class, the featherweight division, and he took on a former champion, still a top level fighter at the featherweight division, and they had a very close, very competitive bout a few weeks ago. And the way he performed at a new weight class and him emerging himself to have a title shot in his next fight versus Ray Vargas, another champion at featherweight. Now that's a good look on Brandon Figueroa's part. This was a definite close fight, and as a fan, I definitely wouldn't mind seeing another fight with Mark Magsayo and Brandon Figueroa because of how close this fight was. And the next fight, because this was for the interim WBC featherweight title, the next fight means that it will be for the actual world title, where Ray Vargas will defend his WBC featherweight title versus the interim champion, and now that is Brandon Figueroa, and that should be a good fight as well. And Brandon Figueroa, I mean, from super bantamweight, which is 122 pounds, to the featherweight division, that's 126 pounds. It's not that much of a leap when it comes to the weight adjustment. However, it's still a new weight class. As I said, it's not that much of a difference when it comes to weight. So I don't think Brandon Figueroa is anything specifically new that's gonna have to come out of Brandon Figueroa to adjust to the featherweight division, and he proved himself as a worthy top level fighter at the featherweight division as well after his performance versus Magsayo. Looking forward to what he can do amongst the featherweights in the featherweight division. Y'all let me know what y'all opinions are from this fight. Comment, subscribe, share, like, all that good stuff. And that does it for this video. I'm out of here, y'all. Peace.